There is a town in Pennsylvania that has been on fire since 1962. Not a building in it, the ground itself. A fire nobody set on purpose that nobody could ever put out, burning in the dark under the streets for more than 60 years. They tried everything, and in the end, the government did something almost unheard of. It gave up and moved the whole town out from over the fire. This is the story of the slowest catastrophe we've ever covered, and the strangest. Centralia sat in the heart of Pennsylvania's anthracite country. Hard coal, the cleanest burning coal in America. For a century, that coal was the town. Men went down into it, and the whole region was tunneled through underneath like a honeycomb. With old mines nobody had mapped completely. By 1962, the big mines were closing. The town was small, about 1,000 people. Quiet, ordinary, proud. And like a lot of towns, it had a garbage problem. So the borough did what seemed sensible. It used an old, abandoned strip mine pit at the edge of town as the local dump. The most widely accepted story is this. Just before Memorial Day, 1962, the dump was set on fire to clean it up. A normal thing done every year. But this pit had a hidden flaw. Somewhere in the bottom of it was an opening that had never been properly sealed. A hole that led straight down into the abandoned coal mines below. And underneath Centralia was not dirt, it was fuel. The fire found the coal seam and it went down. Once it reached that vein of anthracite, miles of it threaded through a maze of old tunnels full of air. There was, in practical terms, no putting it out. You cannot flood it. You cannot dig it all out. It simply had more fuel than any fire department on Earth could ever reach. The town had, without knowing it, lit the top of an underground coal supply that could burn for 200 years. And here is what makes this a quiet catastrophe. For years, most of Centralia lived a completely normal life on top of it. The fire was underground, out of sight. There was no wall of flame, no roar, just signs. The snow melting in strange stripes across certain yards in winter. A patch of ground that stayed warm. Steam rising from the soil on a cold morning. A garden that suddenly wouldn't grow. Attempts were made to stop it. Trenches dug, boreholes drilled, ash pumped underground. Every effort came up short. The fire was always deeper or wider or hotter than the money and the maps allowed for. Each project ended the same way. The fire moved on, underground, unbothered. Then the danger changed from strange to deadly. The fire wasn't just heat, it was gas. Burning coal underground produces carbon monoxide, invisible and odorless, and it began seeping up into people's homes. Basements, wells. Families started keeping gas detectors in their houses, the way you'd keep a smoke alarm. In 1979, the local gas station owner lowered a stick into one of his underground fuel tanks to check the level, and pulled it back out too hot to hold. The temperature in the ground under his gas station was over 170 degrees. He was, without exaggeration, running a business on top of an oven full of gasoline. Still, and this is the human part, most people didn't want to leave. It was home. Generations were buried in the churchyard. And a slow, invisible threat, one that hadn't actually killed anyone yet, is the single easiest kind of danger for people to talk themselves out of believing. Until one Valentine's Day, the ground opened up and nearly swallowed a child. On February 14th, 1981, a 12-year-old named Todd Domboski was walking across a backyard when the earth simply opened under his feet. He dropped into a sinkhole, 4 feet wide and roughly 150 feet deep, filling with hot steam and carbon monoxide. He caught a tree root and hung on. His cousin heard him screaming and pulled him out. If he'd been alone, the heat and the gas in that hole would have killed him. He had, by pure luck, survived falling into the fire. That was the turning point. A child nearly dying in his own backyard did what 20 years of steam and warnings couldn't. It made the country pay attention. The questions got loud. How long had officials known? Why was anyone still living here? In 1983, the residents voted. Most of them chose to leave. Congress set aside tens of millions of dollars to buy people out and move them somewhere the ground wasn't burning. House by house, Centralia was relocated and then demolished. The empty homes torn down, leaving streets that led nowhere. In 1992, the state condemned every remaining building through eminent domain. The whole town declared legally unfit to exist. And in 2002, in a final, almost surreal act, the Postal Service revoked Centralia's zip code. The town was, on paper, erased. A place that had been home to 1,000 people no longer officially had an address. Today, almost no one is left. A small handful of holdouts who fought to stay and were finally allowed to live out their lives there before their homes, too, revert to the state. The streets are still paved. The fire hydrants still stand. The town is a grid drawn on an empty hillside, slowly going back to forest. And underneath all of it, the fire is still burning. Right now, it has enough coal to keep going by some estimates for another century or more. Centralia didn't end with a bang, or a flood, or a wave. It's still ending, slowly, quietly, 1 degree at a time. That's what makes it belong in this series. There was no villain here, no single terrible decision, just an ordinary town, an ordinary chore, and one unsealed hole nobody noticed, connected to more fuel than anyone imagined. The catastrophe didn't arrive. It seeped up year after year, disguised as warm ground and melting snow until it had quietly consumed everything above it. The people of Centralia weren't foolish, and they weren't reckless. They just couldn't quite believe that the ground they'd lived on their whole lives could betray them so slowly that they'd never feel the moment it did. If you want another catastrophe that arrived invisibly with no sound and no warning, next time a lake in Africa that killed 1,700 people and their animals in a single night, without a flame, a wave, or a single drop of blood. The night Lake Nyos exhaled. I'll see you there.